A Brexit fishing flotilla has sailed up London's River Thames ahead of next week's referendum over Britain's EU membership. Some 30 fishing boats led by the UK Independence Party floated into the river, showing their support for the Brexit in the next week's referendum. Now, on the other side, pro-EU boats chanted anti-Brexit slogans. Britons are set to hold a referendum on June the 23rd. The issue has also raised serious concerns among EU members. German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier warned against Britain's possible exit from the European Union. He said the move could lead to the bloc's disintegration.
We can say one thing with certainty. If a majority of Britons decide to leave the EU, it wouldn't just be 28 minus 1. It would be a shock for the EU, which has required mutual assurances that the EU continued to stick together and that a very successful decades-long process of integration doesn't in the end turn into disintegration.
Steinmeier made the remarks at a joint press conference with his French counterpart Jean-Marc Ayrault in the German city of Brandenburg. The leader of Britain's opposition Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, also warned against any austerity cuts if the people vote for Brexit. Let's speak to Press TV's Mohammed Walji now, who joins us live from London. Now, Mohammed, first of all, about this flotilla, was this a publicity stunt by UKIP, or is there more to it?
Well, it is bizarre. It's been called the Battle of the Thames between UKIP and UKIP's leader Nigel Farage and Bob Geldof, a prominent campaigner and activist here in the UK, who's calling for the country to remain in the EU. They clashed in the middle of the Thames with Nigel Farage's 60 boats going through the Tower of London at about 10 a.m. There hasn't been any real violence. I guess you could say a little bit of a water fight between the two camps, but nothing too serious. But what's at the heart of this issue for Nigel Farage and UKIP is fishing. He believes that being a member of the EU has hurt this industry hugely for the United Kingdom. He argues that the majority of fish stock that comes from UK territorial waters is being shared with European partners. It's caused a loss of jobs. It means that the industry is suffering, and he doesn't understand why we remain a part of the EU and we're losing money in this regard as well. But what's also actually quite interesting is one of the members who's actually on the flotilla supporting the country to remain a part of the EU is actually Boris Johnson's sister, who's on Bob Geldof's flotilla. Now, of course, Boris Johnson, we know, is a strong proponent, one of the leaders of the campaign to leave the EU. So that'll be quite an interesting dynamic to see. There's such a big difference within one family on what they believe about the EU. But again, this is quite a bizarre stunt. A lot of people do believe it is a publicity stunt by Nigel Farage. He did say, however, that this was not a celebration but a full throttle protest. So he's trying to promote the idea that this was actually something trying to make a very serious point. But I think a lot of people have just seen this, as you mentioned quite rightly, as a publicity stunt.
Now, Mohammed, let's look at the wider campaign now with the vote just around the corner. There has been a lot of fear-mongering, so to speak, going on with the Conservative Party specifically speaking of how this is going to affect Britain economically and even Britain's security.
Well, both campaigns have actually been strongly criticised for the way they've handled the campaign. There's been scaremongering significantly on both sides. We've had talk by those in the Conservative Party who are keen for the country to leave, how there's going to be a massive problem of immigration if we remain in the EU, how there's going to be a threat to security because of the people coming into our country. All of this, however, has been criticize and call, and a lot of people accuse them of untruths. There's no factual evidence to back this information. But again, in the same way, on the other side, we've had scaremongering by David Cameron and his camp, who want to remain a part of the EU. They argue that we don't know what's going to happen if we leave the EU. What's going to happen economically? We're going to see a fall. We're going to see the country's economy struggle, and that's why we need to remain a part of the EU. But at the heart of the issue, really, for both camps, and particularly the camp that wants to leave, is immigration. immigrants and migrants are being accused of really causing most of the problems in this country by the campaign. They're saying they've come to this country, they've taken the work or they've taken the benefit system and it's hurting our economy. But on the flip side, there's been academic research showing that European migration to the United Kingdom has actually had a net positive. So the issue a lot of people and a lot of the voters are actually having is they feel that both campaigns are scaremongering and not giving them any real factual evidence to go on what they're voting for. And that's why we're seeing such a split country on this particular vote in this historic referendum that's going to take place next week.
Well, speaking of such a split country, Mohammed, just walk us through what the numbers are looking right now.
Well, the opinion polls at the moment show that the Leave campaign is just slightly ahead at the moment. But as we all know, opinion polls are just opinion polls. We don't know how that's going to impact the actual vote at the end of the day. Right now, it seems that Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage do seem to have the slight upper hand, but over the next 8 days, things can really change dramatically. Also, interestingly, we had Alex Salmond, the former leader of the Scottish National Party, who said, with the country leaning towards Brexit, if, for example, the Scottish people vote that they want to remain a part of the EU, but the country votes for Brexit, we could see another independence referendum in Scotland. So that could also have an impact on how the vote turns out in 8 days.
All right, we'll keep a close eye on the situation. Press TV's Mohammed Walji, they're reporting from London, from studios. Mohammed, thanks very much indeed.